for folks to understand, right? There's always limit to things, right? So you can, for example, lysine is the one that we focus a lot, right? So you can go slightly deficient in lysine in early finishing, and if you are at the requirement or slightly above the requirement in late finishing, they catch up, right? What are these pillars, right? You have the duration and the magnitude. What else should we keep in mind?
Yes. So there are some factors that are key. They are key determinants on whether compensatory growth will occur or not, and the extent of compensatory growth. Maybe to go back a little bit, for the folks that are listening to us, what is compensatory growth, right? So it's basically a period of accelerated growth following a period of growth restriction. And this growth restriction is typically induced by a nutritional deficiency. So one of the main key point of compensatory growth is to induce a restriction in growth. So the pigs can have this period of accelerated growth that typically has a higher efficiency of nutrient utilization, right? And there are two types of compensatory growth that sometimes we forget. Pigs can compensate completely or incompletely. So in the complete compensatory growth, pigs are going to have this fast growth rate after restriction, and will be able to achieve a similar final weight as pigs that were not previously restricted at the same biological age. When pigs have incomplete compensatory growth, they do have this period of accelerated growth, but they don't reach the exact same final body weight as pigs that were not previously restricted. So it doesn't mean that they did not compensate, but it was not sufficient. So the factors that we're talking about, they determine if it will happen or not, and if it will be complete or incomplete. So there are, I think, 4 that the literature since the 60s has clearly defined. The first one is genetics. The second is the stage of growth. The third is the nature of restriction. So how we're going to impose this restriction nutritionally. And the last one is how do you define those patterns, the duration, the levels, and the timing. And if we look at each one of them, individually they have an impact, and collectively they also interfere in one another. So that's the challenge. That's where compensatory growth gets really complex and is a physiological complex process. So do you want to talk a little bit about each one of them? Do you think that would be interesting?
Let's dive right in.
Okay. So the first one that I mentioned was the genetics or the genotype and the stage of growth. And that's one that, looking back to the old literature, we see pigs that had a very different genotype than the lean genotype that we have today. And we see compensatory growth occurring in any genotype. We see it in barrels, in gilts, in tire males. So that's not the point. I think the point with genotype is understanding when those pigs in your particular genetics have the potential to achieve their upper limit to protein deposition or their PD max. It's sure that pigs are going to be able to express compensatory growth before they reach their PD max. So at that point, pigs are in the energy-dependent stage of growth. So the energy intake likely determines how much protein they're going to deposit and how fast they can be growing, right? So when we restrict pigs during this energy-dependent stage of growth, and we allow them to go through the compensatory growth period before they reach PD max, is when we can have compensatory growth. After that, during the protein-dependent stage of growth, the pigs don't have the ability to express compensatory growth. So that is a key point, I guess.